My name is Evelyn Clark, and I'm 68 years old. If you told me 5 years ago that I'd one day be living in a $1 million estate on the coast of Maine, sipping coffee in a sunroom filled with orchids, I would have laughed out loud. Back then, I lived a quiet, content life in a modest lakeside cottage in Vermont, a place my late husband Robert and I bought after retirement. We didn't have much, but we had each other. That little home was filled with hand-me-down furniture, peeling wallpaper, and memories that had softened the rough edges of our years together. It was ours, and it was enough. Then Robert got sick. Pancreatic cancer doesn't give you time to prepare. It hits hard, moves fast, and rips through everything in its path: body, finances, spirit. In 10 months, I watched the strongest man I'd ever known wither into someone I barely recognized. I stayed at his side every moment, refusing to put him in a facility, even when the hospice nurse gently suggested it. He wouldn't want to die surrounded by strangers, I told her. He'll die in his own home with his wife of 42 years holding his hand. And he did. But death has a way of collecting more than just the person you love. When Robert passed, I lost more than my husband. I lost my identity, my sense of purpose, my quiet mornings filled with his humming, my evenings spent listening to him curse at the evening news, and then the bills started rolling in. Even with Medicare, Robert's treatments, experimental drugs, out-of-network specialists, and home medical equipment left me with $93,000 in medical debt. My pension as a retired nurse barely covered the basics. I tried to hold on. I cut back. I sold our car, but after 6 months, I knew I couldn't keep the cottage. The property taxes alone were like a noose tightening around my neck. That's when my son Nathan stepped in. Nathan had always been the pride of my life. Smart, ambitious, and driven, he was my only child. From the time he was a boy tinkering with toy robots, I knew he was meant for something big. I worked double shifts and holidays for years to make sure he could go to a good university. He graduated magna cum laude in engineering, married his college sweetheart, and landed a high-paying job in Boston. He and his wife Melanie had a beautiful home in the suburbs, and a precocious 9-year-old daughter named Lily, who adored books and science just like her father. "Mom," Nathan said during one of his weekend visits, "you can't live out here alone, especially not while you're drowning in debt. It's not safe, and it's not sustainable." I resisted at first. The idea of leaving my home, the last place I'd shared with Robert, felt like another death. "But Nathan," I said, clutching my coffee mug with shaking hands, "it's all I have left." "No, Mom, you have us. You always have us." Melanie chimed in too, sweetly persuasive. "We've talked about this for months, Evelyn. It would be a blessing to have you with us. You'd have your own room, your own bathroom, and Lily, she lights up every time she sees you. She'd love having Grandma around every day." The thought of helping raise Lily, of hearing her footsteps, helping with homework, cooking family dinners, warmed something in me I thought had gone cold. Maybe, I thought, this is the new chapter I need. So I agreed. Selling the cottage was heartbreaking, but I told myself I was trading a memory for a future. After paying off Robert's medical debt, I walked away with about $138,000, not much for a lifetime of work and sacrifice, but I was grateful to have something. Before I moved in, I did something Nathan never expected. At their dining room table, just 2 days after the movers brought in my last box, I handed him a white envelope. He looked at me confused. "What's this?" "For Lily," I said. "It's $60,000 to start a college fund. She's brilliant, Nathan. Let her dream as big as she wants." He looked stunned. Melanie covered her mouth, eyes wide. "There's more," I added, sliding a second envelope across the table. "This one's for you and Melanie. $50,000. Use it for the house, the renovations you were planning, or for whatever life throws at you. I don't want to just live here. I want to contribute. You have your own burdens. I won't add to them." Melanie started crying. "Evelyn, this is too much. We never expected." "I know you didn't," I said. "That's why I'm giving it." Nathan hugged me tightly, whispering, "You didn't have to do this. You've done enough for me already. I want Lily to have everything," I said, "and I want to earn my keep." What I didn't say aloud was that I hoped this would buy me a little dignity, a little place in their home that wasn't conditional, a little space that was mine. The guest room was small, no more than 10 by 12 feet, but Melanie had gone out of her way to make it cozy. Pale blue curtains, a soft comforter, fresh flowers on the dresser. Lily had made a welcome card that said, "I love you, Grandma. You're the best." It was taped to the door. The first 6 months were wonderful. I woke up early every morning to make breakfast: eggs, waffles, cinnamon rolls. I took Lily to school, helped her with science projects, even made a scrapbook of her drawings. Melanie would come home and sigh with relief. "I don't know how single moms do it." "You're a lifesaver, Evelyn," and I felt like one. I folded laundry, cooked dinners, patched up scraped knees, and listened to Lily read out loud every night. For the first time since Robert's death, I felt like I mattered again, but like all things, the warmth didn't last. Not because of any big blowout or major mistake, just little things, a tone, a glance, a shrug, the way Melanie would pause before answering me, like choosing her words carefully, the way Nathan stopped lingering over coffee in the mornings. I ignored it at first. Families have moods, people have bad days, but I'd soon learn, those little things weren't little at all. It didn't happen all at once. That's the cruel part. If Nathan or Melanie had sat me down and said, "We don't want you here anymore," I might have had the strength to leave with some dignity. But instead, it came in whispers, half glances, polite dismissals, subtle changes in tone, and those are the kinds of wounds that take the longest to heal. The first real shift came in the kitchen. I'd always loved cooking for the family. Every morning, like clockwork, I'd be up before everyone else preparing eggs, toast, smoothies, whatever they needed to start the day right. It made me feel useful, alive, but one Thursday morning I noticed the eggs were left untouched. Nathan came downstairs with his travel mug and his Bluetooth headset already in his ear. "No time today, Mom," he mumbled, barely glancing at the table. "Gotta beat traffic." I nodded, brushing egg crumbs into the trash. No big deal, I thought. Everyone has hectic days. But then it happened again the next day, and the day after that. Melanie started prepping breakfast the night before. Yogurt parfaits in mason jars, pre-sliced fruit, and always only enough for 3. "Oh, Evelyn," she said when I opened the fridge, "I didn't think you'd be up early today." I'd always been up early. I chalked it up to miscommunication. I didn't want to jump to conclusions. I wasn't that kind of mother-in-law, the kind who sees offense in every shadow. But deep inside, a flicker of unease began to burn. The real gut punch came from Lily. She was always my bright spot, my little shadow. We used to spend afternoons reading, building puzzles, or baking cookies. She'd sit in my lap and ask about Grandpa, or what her daddy was like as a little boy. I thought in some way I was helping shape the best parts of her. One evening, I knocked gently on her bedroom door, holding a book we used to read together, Charlotte's Web. She didn't answer right away. Then came a soft, muffled voice. "Mom says I should read by myself now, that I need to be more independent." I stood there, book in hand, staring at the door. That word independent, it was a knife. I hadn't asked to cling to her. I hadn't pushed myself on her. I was just trying to love her. When she finally opened the door, she smiled. But it was different now, less eager, more like courtesy. Even the house itself began to feel colder. I'd hear the murmur of conversations behind closed doors that would fall silent when I entered. I'd walk into a room and feel the air change, not with anger but with dismissal. I'd suggest we watch a movie together and get vague responses. "Maybe next weekend. We'll see. We've got a lot going on." They always had a lot going on now. Then came the Sunday dinner. I'd spent the afternoon preparing a roast just like Robert used to love. I lit candles, folded cloth napkins, and even set out the good plates Melanie kept tucked away for special occasions. This was a special occasion, or so I thought. But as the clock crept past 6, no one came down. I peeked into the living room. Nathan and Melanie were eating Chinese takeout from paper containers in front of the TV. Lily sat between them, laughing at something on the screen. I stood frozen in the doorway, the aroma of my roast filling the hallway behind me. "Oh, Evelyn," Melanie said, finally noticing me. "We weren't sure if you were cooking tonight." Nathan picked up takeout after Lily's soccer game. I forced a smile. I left a note on the fridge." "Oh," she said, chewing. "Must have missed it." I turned back to the kitchen, blew out the candles, and covered the food with foil. We'd have leftovers for the week. I told myself it didn't matter, that I was being sensitive, but I knew better. I was being erased, softly, politely, but unmistakably. And then came the comment that shattered any lingering hope I had. One afternoon, I walked into the kitchen just as Nathan ended a phone call. He didn't see me right away. "Yeah, it's just hard," he said. "We're trying to make space, but she's always around. It's like we're walking on eggshells in our own home. Honestly, Melanie's right. She's becoming more of a burden." He turned and saw me standing there. The silence that followed was sharp enough to slice through bone. His face changed. Panic, guilt, something in between. "Mom, I didn't mean." "I understand," I said softly. "Don't worry about it." And I walked out of the room, my heart pounding like a drum. That word echoed in my head for days. Burden. After everything I'd given. The money, the help, the emotional labor of trying to fit into a life that had already moved on without me. I'd never asked for rent, for gratitude, or even for space. All I wanted was to feel like I mattered, and now I understood. I didn't, not to them, not anymore. But what they didn't know, what they never even thought to ask, was that I had options. I wasn't helpless. I wasn't cornered. I had a secret, and I was about to remember exactly who I was before they made me forget. The day Nathan called me a burden, something inside me went silent. Not broken, not shattered, just quiet. The kind of quiet that comes when you stop trying to convince people of your worth, when you finally see the truth, not in what they say, but in what they do.
After that moment in the kitchen, I stopped waiting for a change. I stopped hoping for a second chance to be seen. Instead, I went to my room and pulled open the old walnut box where I kept the most important documents of my life: Robert's will, our marriage certificate, the faded photos from our honeymoon in Quebec, and at the very bottom, a single envelope with a gold seal. Inside was the letter I'd received exactly 10 months earlier, a letter I hadn't told anyone about, not Nathan, not even my closest friends. It was from Langford and Burnell Private Equity, a firm based in New York. The letter was crisp, formal, so polished it almost felt impersonal. But what it contained was deeply personal. Dear Mrs. Evelyn Clark, it began, we are pleased to inform you that your investment in Athena Therapeutics has reached full liquidity as of Q3, and the proceeds will be deposited per your agreement within 15 business days. I had to reread it 5 times before I understood what I was holding. You see, nearly 20 years ago, when I was still working full-time as a trauma nurse, one of the resident physicians I'd mentored, Dr. Arjun Mahesh, came to me with an idea. A biotech startup focused on neuroregeneration. It sounded like science fiction at the time, but Arjun wasn't just a dreamer. He was brilliant, methodical, and relentless. I know you don't have much to invest, he'd said over hospital coffee, but you believed in me before anyone else did, and that counts for something. So I gave him $20,000. It was a third of my emergency fund. I didn't tell Robert until after I signed the agreement. He was furious at first, but he knew me. He trusted my instincts. I just hope it works out, he'd muttered. And now it had. That $20,000 had grown to over $3.1 million, and with dividends and other residual assets being folded in over the next year, my total liquid worth was approaching $4.6 million. I remember sitting on my bed that night, letter in hand, shaking, not from the money, but from the possibilities it opened. It wasn't just a windfall, it was freedom. At first I wasn't sure what to do with it. I considered moving to a small apartment somewhere peaceful, maybe even buying back my lake cottage, but the longer I stayed in Nathan's home, watching their kindness rot into contempt, the more my vision started to sharpen. What I wanted wasn't just escape, I wanted restoration, and I wanted it with style. That's when I remembered Whittier Hall. It was a grand colonial estate I'd seen once during a fall foliage tour through Maine with Robert. The house had been partially abandoned, an architectural relic with boarded windows and vines crawling up the porch rails. But even then, it had taken my breath away. Robert had laughed when I said I'd live there one day. If we win the lottery, he'd grinned. Well, maybe I didn't win the lottery, but I was a woman with nearly $5 million, a bruised heart, and something to prove. So I called the real estate agent listed in my old tour brochure. It's off market, she said, but the owners might still be willing to talk if the offer's serious. I'm very serious, I replied. Within 2 months I'd bought Whittier Hall outright, for $1.4 million. Then I did something Nathan never would have suspected. I hired a full restoration team, preservation architects, landscape designers, interior stylists to bring the estate back to life. Every penny I spent was mine. Every design choice, mine. I asked for nothing from anyone. While Melanie was teaching Lily to make yogurt parfaits for 3, I was selecting hand-loomed rugs for the grand foyer. While Nathan was sighing about the grocery bill, I was negotiating a $200,000 renovation for the solarium. While they whispered about how I was always around, I was choosing chandeliers for the dining room I hadn't yet invited anyone to see. All of this, I did quietly. I kept my routine at Nathan's house, folded laundry, picked Lily up from ballet, attended school recitals with applause and a smile, but I also made frequent trips upstate to visit an old friend. That friend, of course, was the construction crew at Whittier Hall, and the attorney I retained to help organize my trust, estate planning, and final financial arrangements. I bought a first-class wardrobe for the first time in my life, hired a private house manager to oversee day-to-day logistics. I even joined the local garden society in Maine under my maiden name, Evelyn Hawthorne, so no one could trace the social registration back to Nathan, because this wasn't just a new chapter. This was my rebirth. The only person I shared the secret with was Miriam, my best friend of 40 years. She lived in Colorado, and we only spoke every few weeks. But one day, after yet another cold dinner where Nathan barely said 2 words to me, I called her in tears. I don't think they love me anymore. I whispered. No, she said. They do. They just love you less when you're inconvenient. That's not love you can trust. And she was right. So I didn't trust it. I trusted myself, my instincts, my planning. I knew the time would come when they'd show me exactly who they were. And when they did, I'd be ready. And when I finally walked out of that house, I wouldn't be looking back. I wouldn't be limping away in shame or packing my things in trash bags. I would leave with dignity, silence, and power. Because they thought I had nowhere else to go, but I had a mansion, and they were never going to see it coming. It was a Saturday morning, when everything changed. The sun was just rising over the Boston suburbs, casting a golden haze through the kitchen windows, as I stood washing my coffee mug, the same mug I used every morning since I'd moved into Nathan's house. It said "Best Grandma Ever," and Lily had given it to me for my birthday the year before. The handle had a tiny chip in it, but I still loved that mug. It reminded me that for a little while, I was appreciated here. Nathan walked in, dressed in his usual weekend uniform, faded jeans and a branded hoodie from his tech firm. He didn't look at me right away. He grabbed the coffee pot, poured himself a cup, and stood staring out the window like he was preparing for something unpleasant. And then he said it. "Mom, we need to talk." I dried the mug slowly, not turning to face him just yet. "All right, I said calmly. He cleared his throat. Melanie and I have been discussing things. The arrangement. You being here. Go on, I said, folding the dish towel neatly. It's not that we don't appreciate what you've done. We do. And we're grateful for the help you've given Lily. And obviously, the money. That part came out almost grudgingly. But, he finally looked at me, and in that moment I saw it in his eyes. The discomfort. The guilt. The awkwardness of a man trying to say something ugly, in a polite tone. But, it's been 2 years. And honestly, Mom, this isn't working anymore. Melanie's been patient. We both have. But it feels like you're around all the time. It's hard to have our own space. Lily's getting older, and we want her to learn independence. And he hesitated just a beat too long. You've become kind of a burden. There it was. Burden. Not a partner. Not a parent. Not a woman who had cooked every meal for this family, who had held them together during emergencies, who had given up her home and most of her savings so they could breathe a little easier. A burden. I set the mug down with a soft click and turned to him. You're right, I said simply. He blinked. I am. Yes, you're absolutely right. I walked past him to the hallway. It's time I figured out my own life. He looked stunned as if expecting resistance or begging, but I had no energy left for that. What I had now was clarity and plans. I'll be gone by this evening. Mom, wait, he said, scrambling. I didn't mean you had to leave right now. We can find somewhere nice. A retirement community, maybe. Or, no need, I said, smiling just slightly. I've got it covered. I went to my room, closed the door and took a deep breath. Then I made 3 calls. The first was to Beaumont and Sons, the private moving company I'd retained months ago for just this purpose. This is Mrs. Evelyn Clark, I said when the receptionist answered. I'd like to activate the standing order. Today. Yes, ma'am, she said crisply. We have your inventory list on file. We'll dispatch the crew within 2 hours. The second call was to Grace, my house manager in Maine. Is Whittier Hall ready? I asked. Spotless, she said. Fresh flowers in the sunroom, kitchen stocked, and your library's just how you asked. Welcome home, Mrs. Clark. The third call was to my pilot liaison at the private charter service. I'll need to leave Logan Airport by 5 p.m. Can you confirm? You're confirmed, Mrs. Clark. Car will pick you up by 3:30. And just like that I was leaving. Not with tears, not with sadness, with elegance. By noon the moving crew had arrived. Nathan and Melanie stood in the foyer, as uniformed men packed my things with white gloves, and handled my furniture with more care than I'd been treated in 2 years. I didn't know you'd already made arrangements, Nathan said, watching in bewilderment. I always make arrangements, I replied. It's how I survive. Where are you going? Melanie asked. Her tone was somewhere between curiosity and suspicion. I'll let you know when I've settled, I said. But don't worry, I won't be a burden. Their silence told me everything I needed to know. At 3:30 sharp, the black town car pulled into the driveway. The movers had finished. My suitcases were lined up neatly. I'd left my room clean. Emptied drawers, bed made, even a thank you note tucked under Lily's drawing still taped to the door. As I walked toward the car, Nathan trailed behind me. Mom, he said. Wait. I turned. Is this really necessary? I looked at him long and hard. I gave you everything I had, Nathan. My home, my money, my time, and I never asked for a single thing in return except respect, and instead you gave me that word burden. So yes, it's necessary. He looked stricken, but I could tell, still not because he realized what he'd done, more because he didn't like the optics of a parent leaving like this. At the car, I paused. I left something for you on the kitchen counter. You may want to read it after I'm gone. Then I got in, shut the door and didn't look back. As we pulled away from the house, I allowed myself a small smile. They had no idea where I was going, no idea what I had planned, but very soon they would.
For 3 months, I didn't hear a word from Nathan or Melanie, not a single call, not a text, not even a check-in to see if I'd arrived wherever they imagined I had gone. I suppose they expected me to wind up in a cramped senior apartment or some retirement home with bingo nights and bland casseroles. That would have suited their story, a gentle landing for the woman they just couldn't accommodate anymore. What they never imagined, what they couldn't even fathom, was that I had landed in a 7-bedroom colonial mansion overlooking the Atlantic coastline of Maine, that while they were still eating lukewarm takeout on their couch, I was sipping Earl Grey in a sunroom lined with orchids and hand-stitched tapestries. Whittier Hall was everything Robert and I had dreamed of and more. Every room whispered history, the hand-carved banisters, the coffered ceilings, the library that smelled of mahogany and old books. Grace, my house manager, kept everything humming like clockwork. There were fresh flowers every morning, French pastries from a local bakery, and a fire crackling in the parlor by sundown. But my favorite room, the conservatory, glass walls on 3 sides, overlooking a garden blooming with roses, lavender, and peonies. That's where I sat the morning Nathan came knocking. I'll never forget the moment. Grace appeared in the doorway, her expression composed but curious. There's a gentleman at the front gate, she said. Says his name is Nathan Clark. I lowered my tea, heart steady. Let him in, I said. Offer him something warm and bring him to the conservatory. When Nathan stepped into the room, his jaw practically unhinged. Mom, this place, is this where you've been? Yes, I said, folding my hands in my lap. Please sit. He did awkwardly, like someone unsure if the chair beneath him was made of spun glass. He looked around at the crystal chandelier overhead, the antique birdcage in the corner, the gleaming floors beneath his polished shoes. You bought this? I did. He blinked. How? I raised one eyebrow. Does it matter? His mouth opened, closed. No, I guess not. I could see it then, the reason for his visit, the fidgeting, the stiff shoulders, the way his fingers picked at an invisible thread on his coat sleeve. Something was wrong. Why are you here, Nathan? He swallowed. I came to talk and to apologize. I waited. You were right. About everything, he said. We took advantage of you, treated you like you were disposable. Melanie and I, we didn't realize how much you did for us until you were gone. Lily misses you. We all do. I said nothing. His voice cracked. And we're in trouble, Mom. There it was. What kind of trouble? He hesitated, pride visibly warring with desperation, but in the end, desperation won. We're behind on the mortgage. Melanie lost her job 2 months ago. My company did layoffs. I'm still employed, but my salary was cut by 30%, and we maxed out our cards. Everything's overdue. The bank's threatening foreclosure. I nodded slowly. And what would you like from me? He looked up at me, shame all over his face. We need help, just temporary, a loan maybe, or if you'd be willing. We were wondering if we could stay here, just until we get back on our feet. I studied him. My son, the boy I raised, sacrificed for, loved more than breath, the man who once looked me in the eyes and said, "You've become kind of a burden." And now here he was, asking for shelter in the home I built without a dime of his help. I stood and walked to the tall windows, looking out over the garden. I'm not angry, Nathan, I said after a moment, but I am changed. He didn't respond. When I lived in your house, I thought I had to earn my place. I gave you money, time, everything I had, and you gave me the scraps of your life. That broke something in me, but it also woke something up. I turned. I have boundaries now. He nodded slowly. I understand. No, I said gently. You need to understand. I will not rescue you from the consequences of your choices, but I will offer something. He sat up straighter. I have a guest cottage at the edge of the property. It's fully furnished. 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, kitchenette. You and your family can stay there for 6 months. No rent, but you'll pay your own utilities, and after that you find your own way. His face trembled. Thank you. I'm not done, I said. While you're here, you will treat me with the respect I should have been given long ago. You won't ask me to babysit unless it's planned in advance. You will not speak to me like I'm a nuisance, and Lily will not be taught that her grandmother is someone to be tolerated. He was crying now, not dramatically, not performatively, but quietly, shamefully. I'm sorry, Mom. I know you are, I said, softer now, but sorry is the first step, not the last. I walked over, placed a gentle hand on his shoulder, and added, You once called me a burden, Nathan, but now you see I wasn't weighing you down. I was holding you up. The guest cottage sat at the edge of the eastern garden, surrounded by climbing roses and boxwoods I'd had planted long before Nathan ever imagined needing to live there. It wasn't grand, just 2 bedrooms, a modest kitchen, and a living room with a fireplace, but it was warm, quiet, and dignified. The irony wasn't lost on me. For months, I'd been unwelcome in a home I helped sustain. Now the son who once suggested I figure out my own life was living on the edge of mine. Nathan, Melanie, and Lily moved in 2 weeks after his visit to the conservatory. Grace handled the logistics, new linen, stocked fridge, fresh towels, while I maintained my distance. This wasn't revenge, this was a boundary, one I intended to keep. The first few days were awkward. I saw them only in passing, Melanie keeping her head down, Lily offering shy smiles, Nathan trying too hard to act normal. They were guests now, not hosts. The power dynamic had shifted, and it showed. One evening I was pruning the hydrangeas near the back veranda when Lily wandered up to me, clutching her sketchbook. "Grandma," I turned. "Can I sit with you?" I nodded, and she settled beside me on the stone bench. For a while we sat in silence, her drawing, me tending to the blooms. Then she said softly, "I'm sorry we made you feel like you didn't matter." I looked at her, my sweet girl, so young but perceptive. "You didn't make me feel that way, sweetheart, but thank you for saying that." She showed me her sketch. It was of the conservatory vines trailing over the glass, birds perched on the roofline, and a small figure standing among the plants. Me. "It's beautiful," I whispered. She beamed. "I want to be like you. Strong." I hugged her, tears stinging my eyes. Of all the things I thought I'd lost, my bond with Lily was the one I grieved most. But there it was again, fragile, but rebuilding. That weekend, I hosted dinner, not out of obligation but choice. I made pot roast, Nathan's favorite. Melanie brought dessert, a timid peace offering. We sat in my dining room, beneath the chandelier I'd chosen myself, eating off the fine china I used to think was too special for ordinary days. It was quiet at first, careful, like walking across ice, but then the conversation warmed. Lily talked about school. Melanie mentioned looking for work again. Nathan offered to help with garden maintenance, a suggestion I appreciated but didn't respond to right away. They were trying. I could see it. After dinner, Nathan asked if we could talk alone. We sat in the study, surrounded by books Robert and I once collected, and for the first time since I'd left their house, he looked me in the eyes and asked the question he should have asked years ago. Were we really that awful to you? I didn't answer right away. You weren't monsters, I said finally. You were careless, comfortable. You assumed I had nowhere else to go, so you stopped treating me like someone who could leave. He nodded, slowly. We didn't see you. Not really. No, I said. You saw the help, the money, the meals, but not the woman giving them. He looked pained. I hate who I was. Then become someone else, I said. That's all we can ever do. And to his credit, he did try. Over the following months, they paid their own way, stuck to boundaries, and slowly, cautiously earned trust back. Melanie found part-time work. Nathan picked up freelance projects. Lily and I returned to our weekend baking sessions, this time in my kitchen, on my schedule. I never moved them into the main house. That door symbolically and literally remained closed, but I let them into my life again, on terms that honored my worth. And you know something? It was enough. 1 year later, Nathan pulled me aside after a Sunday brunch and handed me a check. We've saved enough, he said, to move out. First and last month's rent. Security deposit. We're ready. I looked at the check, then at him. Are you asking to leave, I said with a small smile, or asking if you can stay? He laughed, awkward but sincere. Stay, if that's okay. I nodded. Understood. He had learned. Finally, he now knew that help is a gift, not a debt, that presence is not an obligation, and that when someone offers you their heart, their labor, and their love, you don't treat them like furniture, you treat them like the foundation. Today, I live my life as I always should have, on my terms. I volunteer at the local library, host garden socials, and read in my conservatory every morning. My neighbors see me as elegant and gracious, but make no mistake, I am also steel, because when you've survived betrayal with grace, and come out richer, emotionally, spiritually, and financially, there's nothing anyone can take from you again. Nathan once called me a burden. Now, he calls me mom, and he never forgets to say thank you.